Hello and welcome to episode number 52 of Behind the Impact. I'm your host, Jeremy Brown. In this episode, Megan St. John, the social impact manager at Stanley 1913, joins the show. Megan, welcome to Behind the Impact.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I've been looking forward to this conversation with you for quite a while, ever since you joined Stanley 1913. So I'm glad we're finally here having this chat. Before we talk a little bit more about what you're doing at Stanley 1913, what I want to do is learn more about your career journey and get a better sense of how you got into social impact leading up to joining Stanley. Can you give me that story?
Absolutely. Um, I have always been very interested in sort of two worlds. I always loved journalism and communications and pop culture. And then I also have always really loved international development and supporting nonprofits and community work. And I was really fortunate that after college and graduating, my first job was doing celebrity engagement at UNICEF USA. So it sort of was this perfect marriage between my two interests. And it was such an opportunity to really learn about business development and strategic matchmaking, which celebrities would actually be the best representation for our brand and to communicate our mission. And I had, the opportunity to really play a hands-on role in that. And so, after UNICEF USA, I spent a couple of years still in the entertainment world doing music marketing at a small startup, primarily working with record labels and again, doing new business development, bringing on new projects and work. And I realized, as fun as it was and as much as I loved it, I realized, Katy Perry didn't need my help selling records. And I really missed working for purpose, a deeper purpose and impact. And so that's when I found myself at Save the Children. And that's where I first started to work on corporate social impact partnerships. And so for the past decade, I've worked at Save the Children, Kiva, and Care on the corporate partnerships team, primarily doing new business development. So really pitching and bringing on new partners to support those organizations' missions. And I did a lot of different types of partnerships in that time. So it was everything from multi-year grants to cause marketing to product donations, volunteering, planning thought leadership events, you name it. And it was also across a lot of different program areas and a lot of different types of companies. So what a tech company is looking for in a nonprofit partner is very different from a financial services company or a retail company, right? So I felt really fortunate to have that experience over the past decade in really understanding how to pitch that business case to companies and to build those really impact driven partnerships. And I think in that role, especially after so long, there's this natural curiosity of what's it like to be on the other side of that conversation. And I think we all experience that. We all question that, and it really became a goal of mine to have that be the next step in my journey. And so last year, applied, blindly to Stanley 1913, and I was so excited to join the team there because I also think that it really was full circle a bit because it's this brand that is really embedded in, has that pop culture, element to it. And it was something that I was really excited about as a brand. And then also to be able to do that impact work, it felt like the perfect fit. So that's really what led me there.
This is super interesting. So, corporate partnerships on the nonprofit side, now you are on the other side
Yeah.
at an actual corporation. I'm curious, from a corporate partnership perspective, what was the hardest thing about that work from a nonprofit perspective? And then same question, but for the corporate side, what has been the hardest part about the corporate nonprofit relationship?
I think one of the biggest things is like transparency and trust. I think on the corporate fundraising side, I saw how there was often a mismatch. Like I would be chasing what I thought the company wanted, even if it meant it wasn't necessarily helpful to our mission or our organization, or continuing to push and pitch a company if they said that's actually not a priority. Um, it's doing a disservice to on the nonprofit side, right? To your time and resources. And then alternatively, I think on the corporate social impact side, I really try to be transparent because I know what it's like to be on the other side of that conversation where you're like, what is their budget? What can we do with them? And so I try to be really upfront of, asking nonprofit organizations, what do you need? Here's what we can do, here's what we can't do, here's what our budget is. And just trying to have that open line of communication and trust and candor that I think I wish I had sometimes on the other when I was a fundraiser. I'm trying to kind of bridge that gap through my work here. So I don't know if that necessarily 100% answers your question, but that's something that I've noticed has been top of mind when I think about those two roles and how they interact.
Are there any lessons that you learned from that your nonprofit experience on the corporate partnerships side that you directly apply to your role right now at Stanley 1913?
Yes, I would say those business development skills is something that has really been valuable in my role. Um, you know, Being able to do that strategic matchmaking, having that drive to go a little above and beyond, that confidence in pitching and presenting that I did as a corporate fundraiser has been really valuable in my role now. Being able to make those business connections and also just the ability to influence as well to tell a story. Fundraisers are the ultimate storytellers, and so having that skill at Stanley 1913 and within a corporate environment to tell the stories of how we're making an impact, how we want to make an impact, making people care, that's been really valuable in my role now.
When it comes to storytelling, do you have any frameworks that you draw on to help tell compelling stories?
I think that that's what we're working on now is how to better tell our story and because that's something that historically we haven't quite done. Stanley 1913 has done a lot of really wonderful work over decades supporting communities, but we haven't quite told that story. And that's actually a key part of my role. And what's keeping me busy now is working closely with our marketing and communication teams to how do we tell this story? Like, what are those elements that we want to communicate to our customers? And I think it's actually what I've seen so far is actually less about reach. Like we're not really big on telling the stories of like the reach of our impact, but more of the actual human stories um, within those partnerships and within the work that we're doing. So I'd say maybe that's the key piece that we're trying to highlight more.
What about your marketing experience? Do you ever find yourself leaning on that skill set your capacity right now?
100%. It's very much a key part of what we want to do is to market these partnerships and these stories more. And so, I have a degree in journalism and PR, which has come in very handy, but then also through that work in nonprofits, it's it's very much been important to partner with our marketing and comms team. And I think having that background and having that, uh, you know, marketing savvy mindset, I think it's helped me to build strong relationships with my marketing and comms colleagues and, have an authentic and genuine connection with them and like having similar goals and being able to collaborate on communicating and marketing this moving forward.
If you had to give advice to another practitioner about how to leverage marketing skills in a social impact capacity, what advice would you give that person?
Well, I would say first is listen and learn. Like listen to your colleagues, learn about the business, learn about consumer segmentation and who the audience is and those stories that you want to tell. And then I think also just embedding yourself in that culture and in that in the brand. Like I feel when I first started at Stanley 1913 last year, like I really worked hard to embed myself in the culture. I used our products and I was, meeting with different teams and understanding how they were developed and understanding, what our future campaigns were going to be, really all of the nuts and bolts of what makes our company who we are. And I think that really helped because then when it came to having those marketing discussions, I knew who we were going to target and how we wanted to tell that story. So I think listening and learning and embedding yourself in the culture is important.
What about challenges? Are there any challenges that you've experienced when it comes to marketing, for example, a partnership?
I'm very, very fortunate that I've walked into a company where social impact is just part of the company. Like there truly is this culture of supporting communities, having sustainable practices, supporting employees who want to volunteer, like you name it. And so I think that the challenge is actually how we do it. Like everyone's bought on, they're ready to go. And now my challenge is okay, well, which partner are we going to amplify? How are we going to tell that story? Which way do we want to do it? Are we doing a percentage of sales? Are we doing a on products campaign? Um, as you know, there's so many different ways that you can market and amplify a partnership or an issue or a cause. So I think it's the challenge is how because there's a lot of different avenues. So like, what actually resonates most with our customer?
And how do you find out what would resonate with customers?
So we are asking. Our marketing team has been asking our customers what they care about, and they have said right, like which is not a surprise. We care about purchasing from brands that align with our values, that support communities, that have sustainable practices. So I think that Stanley 1913 has done a really great job of being able to listen to what our customers want and then putting that into action.
And so what I'm hearing is listening is very much a critical skill to have as a practitioner when it comes to doing this work.
Yeah. And I think listening helps build authentic relationships internally because I cannot do the work that I do without partnering with marketing and the people team and our, comms team and all of the different folks, product development, having those internal key, like really strong, authentic relationships with key stakeholders and other teams. That's what helps me be able to do my job. Um, and I think listening is the first step in doing that and building those relationships.
Let's talk a little bit more about Stanley 1913. I know a lot of people probably recognize the name, but maybe they don't know all the things that Stanley 1913 actually does. Can you talk a little bit about the company?
Yes, I would love to. Well, overall, we are a global lifestyle brand with products that are really driving food and beverage culture. So we've really built a diversified portfolio of products that we like to think fuel daily rituals. So your daily water bottle, protein shaker bottle on the way to the gym, or a transit mug on the way to the office, a cooler with your picnic with friends. Like we're really fueling that human experience and that food and beverage culture. And I would love to share a little background on Stanley 1913 because it's very interesting, but also it closely aligns with the social impact strategy and work that I'm leading. We were founded in 1913 by William Stanley Jr., who was this prolific inventor. If anyone's interested in history, it's worth just checking out because it's a fascinating. He had over 100 patents to his name in like electrical devices and materials. And he created the first stainless steel double vacuum bottle. Like he founded this over 100 years ago. And so that's a long time, over 100 years of experience with building these products. And so throughout our brand history, you know, I think people know us maybe in a lot of different ways. The first 50 years of our company, we really fueled the American workforce, particularly construction workers who had these stainless steel double vacuum bottles on construction sites with them and work sites and fueling that trade work. Even my dad, growing up, he's an HVAC and he had, the Stanley bottle that he took to work every day. There's also, many people who know us from outdoor adventures, kind of that next era of our history. We really were a trusted companion for hiking and camping and all kinds of outdoor activities. And then in 2020, as we really became this leading brand in hydration and disrupted the category with products like the Quencher, right? That really catapulted our brand into a whole different territory. And I think the thread that really connects all of these eras and communities is that spirit of invention. Like that is that is really who we are, from our founder, who was a patent and inventor, to, where we're at today, creating really innovative products, to fuel those daily rituals. And that's really reflected in our mission, which is to create, build, and invent in a better way for a better life and world. And I'm excited to share more about how we do that through social impact.
That is an incredible history, on the company, just incredible.
It's fun,
And you
right?
Yeah, absolutely, and you joined last year. Take me back to that time. You're new at Stanley 1913, you're leading the social impact strategy. Where did you start?
Yeah. So I was really fortunate to walk into a company that, again, deeply believed in social impact, had already been contributing philanthropically for decades, had signature partners and programs, but really saw an opportunity to tie social impact work more closely to our brand. Um, because, you know, I walked into Stanley at a time when our brand was evolving. So our social impact work has to evolve with that. So really the first step was to refine that strategy. Right? How is our work going to evolve alongside the brand? And and what are those key pillars of work that we want to focus on moving forward? And I'd say the second part was really communicating this impact. So, like I had mentioned earlier, we've been supporting communities for years. Two of our signature partners, Charity Water and World Central Kitchen, we've funded consistently for over 3 years, but we never talk about it. People, I don't think, know that. And so I think walking in last year, it was, okay, how do I refine that strategy? What are our core pillars and work going to be? And then how do we communicate this in a really authentic way that aligns with our brand and our values, but also is compelling to our customers? Because I think they'd want to know about Stanley doing this great work and want to be involved in that support. So those are that's really what I walked in on. And I'm happy to share maybe more about that process if that's helpful.
Yeah, that would be helpful if you won't mind.
Yeah. And so I think, in terms of refining that strategy, um, it kind of goes back to what we were discussing a few moments ago of just doing a lot of listening and learning, a listening tour, and talking to people inside the company, talking to people inside the company, outside the company, what was working, where we had opportunities. That really helped give me a foundation for how to move forward with refining that social impact strategy. Deeply embedding myself in the brand, again, like mentioned earlier, of my first week I actually sat in on a sales meeting, which was not something I normally would have done, but it was the perfect way to spend my first week at in this new role, because I was just learning all about the brand and what was to come and the different products. It was a great way to understand our culture and brand. And then I think Stanley as a brand, there were so many different causes and approaches that we could have taken. So when you think about like an outdoor company, it's pretty natural that they would support nature-based organizations or outdoor organizations, or a grocery store would support food security. Those paths are really straightforward. Our consumers and what the brand meant to people was actually a bit more broad. Like, I kind of had this wide landscape of where we can take our social impact work and strategy. So, many people use their products as part of their health and well-being rituals. Do we support social impact work in that avenue? Um, Others are bringing our products along on outdoor adventures or on the field or in the yoga studio, like in sports and that outside culture and athletic culture. Like, do we go in that direction? And so we spent a lot of time, like I spent a lot of time studying those different issues and directions. I actually created vision boards for each of them. Just like, here's the organizations that this would be, and the types of messaging and the visuals. And it actually was very helpful to really see like what actually genuinely connects and resonates. Not just who we are today, but like who we want to be. And where we ended up landing through that process was, one, access to water and food. It's very aligned with our brand. Many people know Stanley, right? We have water bottles, that's going to continue. And so having that access to water and access to food, really aligns well with that food and beverage culture that we are as a company. And then the second is uplifting creators, and that's creators of nonprofit organizations, creators making inventive and beautiful things in the world. And that really ties back into that creator, builder, inventor spirit of Stanley and our founding and our culture. So, access to water and food, uplifting creators, and then of course that third pillar is hometown support. You know, disaster response, hometown volunteering, and various local causes.
I want to go back to the sales meeting that you attended your very first week. I feel like that is such an important thing to do as practitioners to be able to, number one, hear from customers, but number two, also hear the story and the pitch from somebody internally. For practitioners that are interested in sitting in on a sales meeting, do you have any advice for them in terms of how they should approach those type of meetings? Like, what should they be listening for? Um, Anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, we were also just rolling out a lot of our mission, vision, values work as well. And so I found it really helpful just to understand how they were talking about our brand. You know, like we are more than just the quencher, right? Like we have this suite of products and we're fueling this food and beverage culture and just listening to how our chief brand officer and our marketing leadership was talking about the brand, that was just so influential for me and impactful in giving me that start, to fuel this work that I was about to do with social impact. And I would say that was really the biggest, uh, most valuable piece of information was just how we were talking about our company, how we were talking about our products, what were the partnerships that we were working on, and how does that reflect our brand and our communities. Um, so I would say those were some of the key takeaways.
And speaking of products, you recently had your very first social impact driven collection, and I
Yeah,
happen to have one of
there,
them
there
right
you
here.
go.
And if you're listening to this podcast, sorry, go to YouTube and watch the actual podcast so you can see what I'm holding. It's one of their products. Can you talk a little bit about how this whole kind of vision for this collection even came about?
I would love to share more about our partnership with Nest and this first social impact driven collection. This really initiated last year, just a few weeks after I started at Stanley 1913. And my wonderful colleague, Brittany, on our product development team said, I really want to do an artist driven collection for International Women's Day. Um, our product team and as a brand, we really wanted to tell more global stories. We have our customers around the world that buy our products and use our products every day. And so we wanted to, um, have products that really reflect those communities and those stories and be a part of those moments that connect those communities. And so, we were brainstorming and talking, and I said, I know just the perfect nonprofit partner that can help make this happen. And that was Nest. And they are a nonprofit organization that supports artisans and makers in over 120 countries to really support them in making a living from their handicraft. And so think about, it could be a jewelry maker in Seattle or it could be a basket weaver in Kenya, like anyone who's making handicraft and beautiful things in the world. And so what we did was we worked with them and supported their work in two ways. One is we made a flexible donation to fuel their overall mission and their work. And then we also partnered with them to identify artists that we could collaborate with directly and utilize their artwork on our products for this collection. And so we spent, the past 8 or 9 months working hand in hand with the Nest team and dozens of people across Stanley to help bring this collection to life, which um, features 4 artists from the US, Mexico, Ghana, and China. And we've featured their artwork on their products to celebrate the stories and the influence and the meaning behind each of the artwork. So each of the pieces in this collection really represent community, womanhood, culture, celebration. And I think that it's really just beautiful how it ended up turning out, and I'm so happy to see you with yours. And I think this partnership is really exciting and a big moment for our brand in a few ways. It's the first time we've embedded impact and a nonprofit partnership within our products. Like we've never aligned that before. It's also the first time that we've incorporated global storytelling as part of a product collection and really having kind of this deeper story that you can truly carry in your hands with you every day. Um, and I think that it's worth mentioning that we're also in a category that's known for functionality and known for colors, but it's not really known for elevating artists and artistic executions. And I think I'm so proud of how the Stanley team and the Nest team like collaborated and how we brought this to life. And so just as an example, I have my one of my collections here that I'm holding up, and this is from features artwork from Melissa Avia from MA Studio. She's based in Mexico City. And this artwork on this bottle that I'm holding up was originally 100% wool, like woven wool rug. So our Stanley teams literally had a picture of this rug and had to translate it onto our bottle, which is not an easy task. It wasn't just something written, drawn on paper and then easily translated to our products. It took real artistic skill and artistry, and not only to do that in a beautiful way, but also in a respectful way, where the artist felt like their original artwork was still respected and something that they were really proud of to see on our products. And so I think I'm excited to share that because it's something that I think we've not only supported a nonprofit organization by fueling their mission, supporting creators within their network, amplifying their work and their stories and cultures, but then also doing something a little different in our category and our industry in terms of translating these in a really respectful, authentic way for people to have as part of their daily rituals. So
From the time of engaging Nest until the product literally rolled out, what did that timeline look like?
it was about 8 or 9 months of development and partnership, everything from the original idea to when it was launched. And that includes everything from product development and working with the artists and Nest team to make sure that we had all of the materials and the insight and the stories to ensure that we were reflecting their art in a authentic and genuine way on our bottles, all the way to okay, now we have the products. How are we going to build a story around this? And which the marketing teams did a really brilliant job. They actually, some of the marketing was made by her, carried by you, which I thought was just really powerful and in a beautiful way to represent the collection. And so yeah, it was quite a journey of the past few months. And I do want to note that the relationship with Nest started long before that, long before I joined Stanley. My manager, Emily Sitchy, she had some conversations with Nest a couple of years ago who applied, were interested in a certain area of work that we were doing, and it wasn't the right fit. But she sort of knew that there was something here, right, with Nest, and kind of built that relationship. And that was actually really critical to making this collection and partnership happen because then when we did have this idea and we had this concept, we were able to immediately go to Nest and say we've got an idea. We think we want to collaborate with you on this. And it was just immediate. It was instantaneous because we already had that relationship built with them. We trusted them and we were able to jump right in at lightning speed to kickstart this project. So it's something that the Nest team and I and the Stanley team we've been talking about the past few weeks of how it just it takes time to build those relationships, and sometimes it takes that serendipitous moment where like the stars align and it's like yes, the idea is there, the partners are there, and then you can move forward. So I'm really proud and happy with how it turned out.
Well, congratulations on the collection. It's amazing. And
Thank Thank you.
Me, like I said, I'm using mine. I love
Yes,
it.
everyone gotta go out and get them. There's 4 beautiful styles.
And I also love that it's literally a collection. Like you collect them all.
Yeah, yes. And they all just have, like, wonderful, did you see the
Yeah,
wrap that it came
I
in? And it
did.
had the little quotes,
Mhm.
had quotes from each of the artists, and, like, you could see the original artwork, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it was very well done. The details were amazing, and I'm very grateful to have one.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about the Stanley Creators Fund. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So this really also falls within that uplifting creators pillar of our social impact work. And this was also a program that was initiated 3 years ago, so prior to me joining Stanley. Um, and what the Stanley 1913 Creators Fund does is it uplifts leaders and creators of early stage nonprofit organizations with grants of $50,000 in unrestricted support. Um, Coming from the nonprofit sector, like admittedly, founders are not necessarily referred to as creators. But when you think about it, like that's exactly who they are. These are people who have a vision for a better world. They have that drive and that inventiveness to do it differently. And so that this program really celebrates those individuals and their organizations. These are people that are creating and building and inventing ideas and programs that strengthen communities. So as of this year, we have a total of 23 grantees. Our current cohort is 10 grantees this year, and it's really a mix of variety of organizations and causes. So we have grantees that are supporting adults with developmental disabilities, programs supporting youth to develop their own radio stations and programming, an organization that turns rainwater into safe, clean drinking water. And so the program is purposely designed to be really broad in terms of the types of organizations that we support. But what they all have in common is that inventive spirit that really ties back to that creator, builder, inventor ethos that really makes Stanley who we are. So, these organizations, they might be supporting causes and issues that we're all familiar with, like mental health or youth development or food security, but they're all doing it in like a very unique and different way. So, I think that's something that we really, are proud of to support these organizations at the stage that they're at.
Are employees at Stanley 1913 involved in any way, or there's a primary vehicle, just the grants and supporting nonprofits on the financial side?
Yeah, that's a great question. They are. So we actually have an employee review committee that is part of the process of looking at the finalist and reading the applications, and they really provide feedback and thoughts and questions, and we have a discussion together as a group to be able to talk through those finalists and those grantees. And it was it was so helpful to have their insight because they catch things or they have questions, they have different perspectives, and they really do help shape who we end up choosing and selecting as our grantees. So they're part of that process, and then we also it's actually I'm so glad you brought this up because it's really something that our employees love this program, um, because they have an opportunity to engage with them in a more a deeper way. So we've had them actually at that sales meeting that I mentioned earlier last year. We had one of our grantees attend that sales meeting and provide an overview and do a Q&A of her work and the work she was doing. And so we've also had different, opportunities where we've been able to engage our employees with these grantees. So it's definitely been, I think, a benefit to have those connections and have employees be engaged in that way.
That's so interesting. So going back to the whole sales meeting, you had a grantee a part of that meeting. Can you take me back to that sales meeting and what that looked like in terms of how the grantee was engaging in that call?
Yeah, so they were there in person and they went on stage with my manager Emily Sitchy, who's the VP of Sustainability and Social Impact, and she did a Q&A with our grantee Ashley from the Therapy Fund Foundation, which is based here in Seattle, and her work supports mental health practitioners and provides mental health services to primarily Black and Brown communities, and oftentimes for free. And so it was such a wonderful way to have her on stage and to be able to share about the work that she's doing. And we opened it up to the folks at the sales meeting, and they were asking um, really critical and impactful questions. I think at one point, Ashley said afterwards that she had never been asked some of these questions, and it was like this beautiful human moment. Oh, you know what it was? Somebody asked. She was heavily influenced by her grandmother, and somebody in the audience asked what her grandmother's name was. She's like, nobody's ever asked me that in the stories, and it was like this beautiful moment and human connection that I think was very welcomed in a sales meeting, right? Where it's very business focused, and it really was inspiring and really well received on both ends, which is important, right? You want your grantees and those that you support to be, also find value and feel that sense of community at the same time.
And I imagine for the employees that were at that sales meeting, that was meaningful for them because they got a chance to see an organization that Stanley 1913 is actually supporting and kind of see the fruits of the labor, so to speak.
Yeah, and then it's not just a talking point of what we do, it's actually embedded in our business, hence why we're talking about it at our sales meeting. So, I think that that's a true testament to Stanley's leadership. And like I said, I walked into this culture where social impact and the programs like the Stanley 1913 Creators Fund is really something that we're proud of as a company, and as part of those, um, different business opportunities.
And speaking of business, one of the topics I would really love to get your point of view on, and it's a topic that has come up quite a bit, and I've had many conversations about it. But this idea of driving business value through impact, and I'm curious to get a better sense of when it comes to moving the business needle. Are there any business outcomes that you're specifically focused on influencing within Stanley 1913?
Mm. I think the first is brand. So, like I said earlier, we've asked our consumers for feedback. They've told us they want to support and buy from brands that are aligned with their values, support communities, have sustainable practices. So I think communicating more to them and making them a part of that journey, that actually helps to contribute to and shape our brand and the future of our brand. And so, um, I think about, like, within our industry, like, there's companies that have rolled back on their social impact work and their DEI efforts, and consumers have responded, right? And then there's companies that are like, no, we're standing behind this and we're going to continue to invest in this. And consumers and folks rally behind that. And so I think that brand is a big business driver, and being seen as a purpose driven brand, which we are. We have the evidence and the years and years of supporting communities and the environment in a lot of different ways and initiatives. I think that that really helps move the business needle when it comes to our brand. And I think that, if I can just add that, I think partnerships like with Nest in this collection that we've just launched, that's a key example of that, where um, we're building products and partnerships that we know that resonate with our communities and are uplifting communities and artisans and creators. But it's also, signaling that we're a brand that cares about supporting creators, uplifting these global stories, and and giving back to our communities and partners. So, and then I would say the second is really employee engagement and the employee experience. The work that we do in social impact really instills a sense of pride and connection with our employees. I see how inspired they are. They've come up to tell me, that they love that the company that they work for is doing this work. And I think that something that I'm so excited that I've been a part of is being able to partner with our people experience team and being able to highlight these different partnerships or organize company-wide volunteer moments to be able to again like reflect our values and reflect this work in real life, you know, and and put it to action and in emotion.
One of the things that has come up quite a bit in conversations with other practitioners is this idea of being perceived as a cost center specifically from their executive team. They see money going out and, money not coming in. They're not a revenue generating function. Out of curiosity, in your opinion, what determines if an impact function feels like a business value add versus just a cost center?
I mean, that's a tough question. But I think, you know, I think it's really about values. Um, like for example, uh, sustainability, which social impact and sustainability at Stanley 1913 is pretty intermixed. We're part of the same team. Sustainability is part of our core values as a company. That is core to who we are, and it's always going to be something that we do. And our team sits under the product team, and so it feels like we're already embedded in that. And when you think about our mission, create, build, and invent in a better way for a better life and world, that's part of our mission as a company. So I feel that it's really been, that connection to our values, to um, our mission, and just having that leadership buy-in. Like our leaders are just, they're all bought in. Our chief brand officer, our chief product officer, our president, like they are bought into this work. It is important to them. And I have seen that, from my first week at Stanley, seeing one of our grantees on stage at a sales meeting to continued investment in this work this year. And so I think that, really having that leadership buy-in has been just so critical. And just having this work embedded in as part of that strategic plan has been really critical and has given me that runway to be able to, refine the strategy and to move forward with so much impact driven work.
Most impact functions tend to sit under HR or legal. I think you're the first person that I've spoken to that has a function that sits under product. It makes sense though, given, the company, but talk a little bit more about having both your function as well as sustainability under product and what that means for your strategy and how you approach the work.
Yeah, so that's great insight to know, but it is a great place to be because um the product team is the one creating new products. They're marketing these products, and so our focus is very product driven, and having that insight on what we're doing, what's to come, um, is actually just helpful in aligning with the brand, aligning with our products, aligning social impact and sustainability with that. And then from a sustainability standpoint, um, a majority of our products have recycled stainless steel as part of our products. And so, again, that aligns well with being a part of the product team. So, I think it's just having that visibility into everything that they're doing and that this work is a part of products. Again, like that Nest partnership, that stemmed from a collaboration and an idea that the product team had. And so, um, I think it's been really valuable to sit within that product function.
And I imagine by being under product, you have access to the roadmap, so that helps you probably get kind of ahead of different campaigns or future collections you wanna create because you know what's coming down the pipeline.
Absolutely. Like, and anytime I ask like the marketing or product team of what is coming down, the pipeline, they share that no problem, like with me. And that just that trust and that genuine, um, connection and relationships that I've built within the company, it's just made my job so much easier because again, like if I'm refining the strategy, especially last year when I was doing that exercise of refining the strategy, um, knowing, okay, these are the types of partnerships or these are the types of products that were coming, it helped me understand the brand and the direction that we were going in, and thus helped me to make better decisions about which partners to invest in. Because I also think like in order, you need to have that foundation within a partnership before you start talking about it, right? And so, want to be able to build that strong community of partnerships and impact um, before then, working on communicating and marketing that.
You mentioned a couple times collaborating internally with different departments like marketing. Can you talk a little bit more about what the kind of internal collaboration looks like from your function and collaborating with other functions like marketing?
Yeah, well, I have a monthly meeting with our some marketing leads, and it's an opportunity to really learn about what's going on in their world, but also for them to know what's going on in the social impact world, and finding those connects, and then also supporting those ongoing communications. We have leadership who is on board with us communicating this work more, and so that's our opportunity to try to build those pathways of how are we integrating this messaging in our emails to customers, on our social media, within different conferences or events we might go to. So those monthly meetings with marketing have been really helpful. I also meet monthly with our partnership team. So these are the team that's responsible for, the partnerships with Post Malone or Leo Messi, these sports teams, pop culture icons, fashion brands. Also seeing like where might those be an opportunity where we can collaborate. Uh, and then, product again, sitting within under the product team, that one's really easy in terms of always having those, all hands meetings and being able to have those conversations about how we can potentially integrate social impact within product, like that Nest campaign.
And so, in your role right now, obviously you're collaborating with several different departments. You're under product. You have access to the roadmap. You now have some time at Stanley 1913. You came from the nonprofit sector, or at least have that background. In terms of capabilities for a practitioner and what they need to have to be successful in this type of role, if you had to call out, a few capabilities, what would those capabilities be?
Relationship building. um, like being a yeah, kind of being a people person, right? I mean, I think I've genuinely built these relationships because connecting person to person with these folks. Um, Strategy, being really strategic in the asks that I'm making or the partnerships that I'm presenting. I'm not saying, hey, I want you to highlight this partnership just because. I'm always building the business case of here's why our customers actually care about this, or this aligns with a marketing campaign that we're doing, or this is something that one of our brand partnerships cares about, right? So I would say strategy is another one. Um, and I think a genuine enthusiasm for this work. I mean, um, I love the nonprofit partners that we have and the projects that I'm working on with them. And I love the Stanley 1913 brand and the products that we have. And so I just feel like I have this natural enthusiasm of wanting to share it. Um, and that's been, I think that drive of like wanting to share it has also been really valuable. And just a quick example of this, I partnered with our people experience team to have a launch party when we had the Stanley 1913 and Nest collection come out a few weeks ago. We had this internal launch party, which we don't do very often for like our all of our different products and partnerships, but I felt like this was a really critical moment to, you know, recognize this milestone moment with our brand, highlight this our nonprofit partner. We had Nest come into the office and share about what they do and the artists behind the collection. And we had probably close to 100, employees, both virtual and in the office, who came and showed up and wanted to listen and learn. And just like they walked away feeling so happy and inspired. And so that was my long-winded way of saying that I think also just like my natural enthusiasm of like wanting to share this work has also been just in a way a it's not really a skill, but maybe a trait that I think has been really impactful in my role.
I'm glad that you mentioned enthusiasm because I feel like that's something that you have to have in this type of role, especially in the corporate sector, because there's so much uncertainty, especially right
Yeah.
now. And so to get you through, the choppy waters, you have to have passion, enthusiasm for the work. That's what gets you through all the uncertainty.
And both sides of the work. Like I feel really passionate and enthusiastic about Stanley as a brand and how we've evolved and continue to evolve as a brand and all the exciting things we're doing, and the new products and the new partnerships, but also really enthusiastic about how I'm able to help us support these amazing organizations and make an impact in communities.
Let's talk a little bit more about challenges. What's one challenge that leaders deal with every day that doesn't get talked about enough?
Um, I mean, it's a lot of work. That has been the biggest surprise. I think I did not realize how much work was in this role, especially I know there's a lot of listeners who might be in a similar position where there's only one or two people doing this work. And that code switching between one moment you're working on, an employee volunteer event or answering employees' questions about volunteering or matching gifts, and then kind of having to switch and you're coming up with marketing ideas. And then you're, supporting your grantees and then you're doing logistics for product donations. I mean, it's a lot of code switching throughout the day. And that has been a challenge for me in terms of trying to find that balance, right? Where you could, where you can give, as much as you can to each of those different avenues of support. But I think it's certainly a lot of work. And it kind of goes back to this the beauty of this role is you do get to work with a lot of different teams, with marketing, with product, with people experience. But with that, there's a lot of different work that comes with that. So I think that's a challenge. It's just like the time and the amount of work there is, which I didn't realize going into the role. Like I felt like it wasn't talked about. And it's funny because I would always on the nonprofit side, I'm like, what happened to the person I had this great call with? And I thought we were ready to go and they disappeared and now I'm like the one disappearing. So I have a lot of empathy now for for those in this role.
Most of the practitioners that I speak to are a team of one, or at most a team of two. And so I'm sure they're all too familiar with the code switching and just all the work that actually goes into not only building a program or function, but scaling one. And you mentioned that it has been a challenge. What are some of the ways you're trying to navigate kind of the whole kind of code switching?
Honestly, Jeremy, I'm still figuring it out. So I welcome if any listeners have ideas or suggestions. I I'm trying to find that balance now. I'm doing the best I can in terms of like giving each thing its attention, um, and trying to what's the priority, what's driving business. Like I do try to tell myself what are these things that are actually moving the needle in business, and those are the things that I should prioritize. If it's not moving the needle on business or the relationship with our partners and grantees, then it probably can maybe be deprioritized temporarily. So that's probably what's helping me right now.
I'm glad that you mentioned moving the needle, because that is something that I'm finding a lot of practitioners starting to realize that they need to do more of in terms of how they prioritize the work that they're doing is prioritizing based off of what is going to help the business move in some way, shape, or form. It could be revenue, it could be employee engagement, whatever the company goals are. I would love to get more of a sense of how what do you think the future of corporate impact, the field itself, is going to be the next, call it 5 to 7 years?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think um, the first thing that comes to mind is AI is completely changing the workforce. And so I think 5 years from now, we're going to be working in a very different environment. Um, but when I think of social impact, I think of people and communities and connection, right? It's like social impact at its core is very human focused. And so that will probably be more important than ever in 5 years. So I don't know what corporate social impact will necessarily look like, but I'm truly believe that it will still be important, um, and play a big role in how we work and live.
Last question for you. If you could eliminate one habit or belief that's holding corporate impact back as a whole, what would that be?
I would say like trying to please a partner or a funder, like thinking you know what they want when really you could just ask what they want or what they need. So for example, we had there was a grantee who pitched something, a certain program. It was tech related, it was AI related, and we said, does it have to, can we just support your work more generally? And they said, oh my gosh, we would absolutely love that. We just thought, all so many companies right now want everything that's tech related. So that's why we pitched you that. And it's like, well, we're not a tech company. So, um, and it was like such a relief for them and it was a relief for us. And I just felt like good thing I asked, right? Because they could have maybe not potentially been a grantee because there wasn't the right fit. And so I felt like chasing something or pitching something where it's not core to your mission and your work, is holding back. And I think that's where like that transparency and trust comes into play. Like, you know, it avoids that mismatch. So if you're a fundraiser, if the company is saying, no, I can't fund this, but I can do X, I can't do X, but I can do Y and Z. And you continuing to push X, it's just doing a disservice to your time. And on the corporate side, I think being really transparent, okay, this is our budget, or this is what we can do, this is what we can't do, um, is just going to be better. I think having that transparent candor between the two.
And I also imagine on the corporate side, it's really important to call out what your mission is, the types of organizations that you're looking to support. And then from the nonprofit side, understanding that if you don't have an offering or a cause that aligns with that company, chances are you're not going to get the result that you want. And so it's better to focus on the companies that are focusing on the cause areas that you're focusing on.
Totally. I've had conversations with amazing organizations. I love them personally and they do great work. It's just not the right brand and business fit. Um, that also means now it doesn't, think about the Nest opportunity. It took a couple of years, it was a no now, but then a couple of years later, it ended up being a yes. So, things can change. I think the difference is not pushing something that's not there in the moment, but instead just gradually building that relationship, that trust. And then, there might be that opportunity in the future.
Megan, thank you so much for joining me and walking me through your career journey and talking about all the great things that the Stanley 1913 team is doing. And thanks again for this.
You're welcome.
I love it. I really
Enjoy it.
I really appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Jeremy, also just for not only having me here today, but also just creating a community for social impact practitioners. For me, being 1 year into this role, it's been incredibly just reassuring and so valuable to know that there's a community that you've created and curated, that I can, reach out and learn and listen from, learn from, and share with. And I'm just really grateful for that community that you've created. So thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Social Impact World, the intelligence layer for corporate impact. To learn more, go to socialimpactworld.com. I'm Jeremy Brown. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Behind the Impact.